Welcome to the Global Real Estate and Entrepreneurship Podcast. I am absolutely delighted to have my Scottish friend with me here today, Ian Jones. What an absolute pleasure it is to have you grace me with your presence.
Thank you.
Ian is a very humble gentleman, but is a giant amongst men and titans of industry. He is the president and founder of BGI Group. And BGI Group just happens to have developed most of the Greater Toronto area.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, some of the buildings that he has been involved in developing are some of our iconic buildings like the Sheridan, the downtown Sheridan Convention Center, the Prince Hotel, Toronto General Hospital, Queen's University, parts of Guelph University, Trent University, St. John's Hospital, and the list just goes on forever. Welcome, Ian Jones.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. And, in order to rhyme off that list, you realize that I've been in the business for quite a while. So that's why I say 50 plus years, and it has. Just briefly, I came over to Toronto from Glasgow in 1960 with family. I went to Winston Churchill School in Scarborough. I scraped through grade 12 and I could not go to university because I had to support my mother. And about 2 weeks after that, I got a job in the mailroom with McNamara Construction, who was building the below grade Toronto subway at Yonge and Bloor at the time. And it was my job to deliver mail to the different projects. And I did that for about a month and I asked the building department manager, could I be transferred? And he says, yeah, on one condition, you take night school courses, you stay with us for a year and we'll pay for that. So I jumped at that chance and that turned into 4 years, 4 nights a week at Ryerson and George Brown to become a chartered quantity surveyor. And we design the economics of large scale developments from beginning to end. So then I worked for a foundation company who built the CN Tower, worked for Mathers and Holdenby Architects, who did the architects for Toronto General and St. Mike's and all of that type of thing, and the 1 million square foot Robarts Library in the University of Toronto. And I was on that for 4 years from beginning to end. So it was about, and then a company came from Montreal that built Place Ville-Marie there and Place Bonaventure, and they hired me as the contracts manager to award all the trade contracts and everything, and after about 17 years of this, I woke up one morning and said, everything I've done is what a developer does. So I started my development company in 1980 and been developing ever since. And that, list, you mentioned some of it, but right up to about 8 years ago, my brother Gary, who I love dearly, and he was in charge of the on-site, he came up through carpentry and everything. So he was VP of construction and he had to have a quadruple bypass. And his wife and doctor, said, he should be in a retirement home, but his mind was as clear as a bell. He used to do CAD drawings on the hospital bed and everything. And he was stuck in a hospital for 9 months and I couldn't figure out why. He just never looked into it. But he did end up getting a bed in Brantford. And I visited them every week. And when I went in the front door, there was this gauntlet of seniors in chairs and wheelchairs looking at the floor. When I left an hour later, same seniors looking at the same floor. So he passed away about 12 months in there. And the day I left, I'm a committed Christian. So the day I left, I said, God, you blessed me with over 50 years in this business. I'm going to do something about it with your help. And we put pen to paper, blah, 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 and out popped something that I called the joy concept. So with that, I'll take a breath and we'll touch on that in a minute or two, maybe.
Well, that is so, and you know, it's so serendipitous that we met and how we met. And even from what you're saying, so um my parents, I had mentioned to you, met in Toronto 56 years ago. My mother had come to Canada. She was East Indian from Guyana, and her family had come here when the British pulled out of Guyana. And my father, white Canadian background, Scottish. And actually namesake, his name was Gary. And I actually lost him about 2 years ago, 3 years ago in November. So we do
Tough.
have two Gary angels on our shoulders.
Yeah, tough.
And his father had come from Glasgow, and he had come as a 12-year-old to Fenland Falls as, you know, I almost want to say we had been orphaned, and he came as an indentured worker almost to as a farmhand. But he had, you know, fantastic luck and blessing, and he became like a son to that farmhand, and that farmhand had a widow who had become his housekeeper and had daughters. And then he fell in love with my grandmother. And so
Lovely.
that, you know, that also is a very Canadian story. And
Yeah.
we happened to meet at a VIP event for the Affordable Housing Summit that we were both involved in, which was an incredible event at the University of Toronto, my alma mater, which you obviously were very involved in building that library, which is a very famous library for U of T. Yeah, we were brought together and we met serendipitously there because, you know, Sean Allen and the University of Toronto, Sarah Sommer, Scarborough Small Business Association, they've done a tremendous job bringing together people in all aspects of real estate and housing to see what kind of synergy we can put together. And this
Wonderful.
is when you taught me and told me about the joy concept, which I'm also a Christian. And I just believe this is really love in action. And to see a person of this level with such a distinguished career put something together like compassionate capitalism. Can you talk to me about compassionate capitalism and how that connects with the joy concept?
Certainly. Thanks, Nicole. Okay, well, when that event happened, you know, losing my brother, you know, I figured I've done quite a bit in this business, and we, you know, decided to do, as I say, to do something about this. But we don't need these buildings. We don't want them, you know, like, and what related is the whole, also the whole COVID thing really made it clear that churches, faith-based groups, etc., all the funding was falling off a cliff. Lots of churches were closing, etc. And being a Christian, you know, I said, well, you know, we can do something about this. We can build these buildings and turn them over to churches who would own them 100%. And get the cash flow coming out of them and get the future equity build up. You know, just like you have a house, you pay down a mortgage, etc. Your equity builds up. Same with these buildings. So we designed this model to basically be able, and taking a look at this whole, you know, all the rent increases, the evictions, etc. You know, in every box that we check, we wanted to make sure that this model answered as much of this as possible. You know, so the model that we have, and again, we know the cost of these, we know costs have gone up, etc., but we know how to do this and build these. You know, and we can produce these so that they come on the market from 1,300 a month, furnished. And then there's like 1 and 2 bedrooms that are, you know, more market rates, etc. And the way we've designed them, they can be about 40 to 50% the whole building affordable under CMHC guidelines. You know, so that allows it to tap into their financing programs, which helps get it built, etc. You know, and it's just that mix of everything, you know, that makes it work. And one of the main things is because churches don't have the money for these buildings like up front. So the financial structure that we use, we bring 100% of the financing to the table. CMHC's programs will provide up to 90% of the construction loan, and we put in the other 10% as equity. But when the building is built and filled and stabilized, we don't take our equity and profit. Non-profits make profit. It just has to go back into the, the business that the non-profits there for. So we leave the profit and the our equity on title as a second mortgage for 10 years at 0 interest and 0 principal payments. So it allows the first mortgage a really good debt service coverage to be able to be financed. Not only that, we've got an agreement in principle with a national property management company who has agreed to head lease the building. So the church does not have to operate the building. The church balance sheet won't qualify with the likes of CMHC, but the national property management company head lease will. So, all these boxes get checked, and we get our development fees. We don't do this for nothing. And we have the satisfaction that, there's a lot of places, non-profit groups, etc., that really like it. We were going to introduce it in just before COVID, but when that happened, I pulled it back off the market. It hadn't actually got onto the market. We were just about to. But the last thing, these are designed for 55 plus, these buildings. Yes. The last thing I was going to do was put on the market a product where people were dying in long-term care and everything with COVID. But as soon as COVID was, deemed finished with, we started really, beating the bushes. And in the last 12 months, we've now got 10 contracts, in Ontario, PEI, Newfoundland, and we're also tapping into the US because we were active there 204 to 208. So we've got all of these for-profit ways of doing business, that we've done for decades, but with a non-profit model, it's designed specifically, so that churches own these, and that won't change. We don't need them. We don't want them. It's that simple. I know it sounds crazy, but it's that simple.
I think it's brilliant. And what's so interesting is I believe my grandmother was part of one of these sort of earlier models. She was, she lived at St. Paul's, at Warden and Finch.
Yes, at St. Paul's Lamoureux.
Yes, St. Paul's Lamoureux. So as a little girl, I would go and visit her, and she would have her own independent apartment, although there were various levels of that building. It was a seniors building.
Yeah,
but she had things she could pull if she had fallen. She had her own little kitchen. She very much had her own independence. But as she aged, she could have the option of going into further assistance. And what was brilliant, we were Anglicans. I was raised Anglican. Is she went to that church, and we were so involved with the church, which was just downstairs. There were a number of, like you said, there was. This becomes a community where people can, there was bridge clubs, there were libraries, there was the church, but it was centered around the church, and the church really was thriving with this community. And look at how it drew me and my family in, because as a young child, I guess they were happy to send me off to McGran's house for a little while to hang out, and she would take me to church. Right?
Nicole, here's the real best part. Each one of these projects absorbs a 20,000 square foot community hub, that does everything that you just described there. So I'm not going to be, I have to watch what I say here, but this could be the new form of church. In other words, it's for outward to the community. Not only food banks, but classes, English second language, all of that sort of stuff. In these projects, we've absorbed 20,000 square feet of community hub space within each of these projects. So it's, churches that might have a 50-year-old church that needs, really a lot of work. We say, no, look at this, we can take that building down, and here's your new church. And it's covered in the mortgage for the overall project. So they're not paying for the construction of it.
This really is, you know, now that I come to think of it, it really is Christ in action. Because so you look at my parents, God love them. They were Sunday churchgoers, if at best. They were Easter and Christmas. They were lovely people, but they weren't really, you know, they didn't really have active faith in their life. But my grandmother, who really did, and as a young child, like I said, they'd be like, go to Grand's house. We were in townhouses that were nearby St. Paul's Lamoureux at the time. So I would just go off to Grand's house, and she would cook me a little chicken dinner and give me a float. And she shared not only the history of our family, but she shared her faith with me. And she took me to church.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, we bypassed the middle group who were busy working and, you know, in a lot of ways didn't feel like they had time, or it wasn't a relevance for them. And I really became my grandmother's pet. And in that old age home, you know, well, not seniors building, it really was not an old age home. It was a seniors community building. We hung out, we became friends. She passed on her faith to me, and we became very close. So I can really, as a human being, and those were very special times to me, especially where I am now in my life, that I realized that she was probably lonely. And she was, you know, she told me the story of our family, the Ramphels. Uh, she told me like it was a soap opera. She gave me the almost like the adult version of the story, because I would see, you know, she had 5 children, and, you know, how they, you know, scrimped and saved to send people to school, and how, you know, my two uncles, you know, one became a lawyer, one became a doctor, and how everybody came across when the British pulled out. And, you know, she shared her legacy with me. She shared her story at a time in her life where she probably felt a little bit forgotten.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I too was just a young child who, you know, I too was a little bit lost and forgotten, because everybody was busy working. And I had a brother, not a sister, and he was busy playing with trucks, and I was very active. So I went off to hang out with Gran, and the two of us had this great relationship in the
Right.
community, like you're talking about building. So
Well, yeah, that's great. It really is. Um, the basically, you know, apart from what I described about being a community hub, basically what we did is we took an apartment building, an independent living building, and a boutique hotel, and blended the three of them together. You know, so this model is for a wellness model. It's not a care model. A 55 plus, and as you can tell, I'm in the leading edge of the boomers. So, you know, and still going strong, hopefully. You know, but
absolutely.
the point being is that that's the market this is for. Now they have third party services on call through the concierge on the ground floor if they require them. But here's one of the best parts. When, you know, because I used to go and, you know, visit these, you know, and what really bothered me was these institutional main floor dining rooms where everybody's sitting, you know, like in the soup and all the rest of it. And I says, look, when we design this building, I says, it's not going to have an institutional main floor dining room. What it's going to have is everybody's got their own, you know, a communal place in the suite or in the shared suites, you know, like so that because those ones I used to say, you know, if it's Tuesday, it must be meatloaf we're having, and if it's Friday, it must be green beans we're having. None of that, you know, because we're lining up with the you know, the services, not necessarily Meals and Wheels, but, you know, all of the new services that bring in food. You know, so it's definitely a wellness product. It's to keep people young. That's why it's called the joy concept. You
Well,
know,
my gran used to make me, she'd give me two, she'd be making the dinner in the toaster oven. We'd do 2 chicken
there you
legs.
go.
She'd give me a little bit of corn. We'd have, and she you know, she had her own little kitchenette. And by the time she got to the point where she wasn't doing that anymore, my mother and her sisters used to do kind of like the Meals on Wheels. They'd freeze
Yeah,
meals for her and she
yeah.
would just take them out and defrost. But she kept that independence for so
That's
long,
the key. That's the key.
which was
You know,
amazing.
and give them purpose. You know, it's also to give them purpose. You know, and a lot of these, you know, they'll attend the new church that's in the project and volunteer for what the church does. You know, so it's more, you know, more of a purpose. And we're also aligned with Pastor Brian Beatty, who was pastor for 35 years, and he's got a company that does outreach. You know, it trains the church staff and everything, you know, how to really do outreach to the community. So these are all the pieces that go together to make this model.
Well, I think the only thing that we need to add is a piano and a singing night, because that was something like, you know, we bonded with. But my father and his people, they were singers. And
Yeah,
you know, there was so much community that was and joy spread through singing songs. So that was something. Maybe I'm an old soul, but I was raised by a lot of older people, and you know, my dad would play the piano and we would sing.
that's
And this
exactly
was
it.
something that even my grandmother would come and she would listen to my father play the piano and the two of us sing, because it brings a lot of joy.
Yeah,
So I just think that there's so many of these things that we can add to this amazing model, and not only a great wellness model, but let's now talk about the affordability and what's going on in the Greater Toronto area. I'll put on my real estate hat at this point, and I'm a former stockbroker. So I'm not just an undercover Scot. I do have a finance background. I'm part
good.
of a global real estate company as well. And you know, one of the reasons why I was at the Affordable Housing Summit is because I represent landlords and property owners and sort of what's going on in the Greater Toronto area. And we continually have this supply and demand issue. But one of the issues really is that we've got the wealth of this nation, the baby boomers, God bless them, sitting on these properties and not leaving. And part of them not leaving and not living their best lives, because let's face facts, and I'll tell you as a realtor working with multi-generational families, they're not living well in these properties. These
Right.
properties become run down. They become a burden to the people that are in them.
Lonely.
They're not particularly safe, and they become, you know, house rich and cash poor, because they're not living their best lives when they're sitting on a $1.5 million home that they can barely take care of. They don't want to renovate. And it becomes a worry for the adult children as well, but they don't want to force people out of their homes. But then financially, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when there isn't an option like this available, where you're like, okay, because some of the options that are available, they are through the roof in the amount of money on a monthly basis that it would cost. We're talking $5,000 a month and more. So, you know, and then you have to think about the longevity of your people from a financial planner point of view. How long, even if a person has amassed a great amount of money, can we sustain this situation? Heaven forbid they have to go into further care where they need, you know, you have to pay more for people to care for them. So to have an option like this with independent living, where someone can, okay, sell their property in the Greater Toronto area, let's say for $1.5 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, and then go and rent a place for $1,300 or $1,500 and actually free up their money. How about give their children an interest-free loan or a very low interest loan so that they can then purchase a property? Imagine freeing up that amount of great properties in the Greater Toronto area and passing it on to, you know, even their own families. And then
Have
they
you,
can live better lives where they're not in danger in their own homes.
have you seen our proprietary files at all? Because what you just mentioned is in there. We've got a page, and it basically says, okay, take, and now this is suburban, you know, like Brantford or whatever. It says take a home worth 800,000, usually mortgage free by that time. You move into I won't mention the names, but at 6,000 a month, you know, you're basically out of money in 12 years. You know, that type of thing. You move into Joy, you know, for 1,300 a month. In 12 years, you've still got like 500,000 in the bank. You know, so you can live twice as long in the Joy model as you can in the models that are out there right now. And I think that's one of the main reasons why people are continuing to live in their own homes, because they look at these prices, you know, and the kids are saying, Mom, if you go in there, you're not going to be able to leave us anything, you know. So all of that comes into the picture. Now, as regards the actual house, it is construction background. It is possible to carve up that house into, you know, 3 flats that could sell for 800 a piece, you know, in today's market.
Because they're large
You know,
lots.
so
All of those older homes,
all of that, you know. So there are, but I mean, I'm not getting involved in any of that because we're laser focused on this model, you know. But there's lots of ways to do that. But I know what you're saying, you know, because they're in those big homes. There's loneliness, there's falls, there's burns, you know. So there is the financial model where they can be in the Joy model and have lots left for their family and still enjoy that type of and sure they get the
well, they
services
can actually have a better quality of life amongst their peers. Because
Yeah.
let's face facts.
No question.
They want to be amongst their peers. They want to talk about their songs and their movies and their faith.
Exactly.
And they become, it's like taking a flower out of a cupboard and putting the flower into the sunshine and watering
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You become vibrant members of a community. And that is a wonderful and important thing.
Yeah. Now, we're putting an intercom all through the building, so in the corridors you will hear music that you're familiar with, you know, as you're walking, coming out there in the morning, and that brightens your day right to begin with. So we're pretty excited about these things getting into the ground. Right now, they're mired in planning approvals, as usual, you know, which is disgusting. Don't start me on that one.
I'm sure you've been through it all, and you've seen you've seen how cumbersome it's become over time, which is also frustrating as you've been through. You said 4 recessions, and I was trained by one of the oldest real estate brokers in Toronto, so I'm well aware of what was happening in 1980 in real estate and the ups and downs that you've seen and you've weathered over that time. But also, some of our entrepreneur friends will talk about how the permit and the tax books have become these larger than the Bible in their and they're so complex and cumbersome to get permits and to get things done. My thing in Toronto, as far as looking at it from a financial point of view, is we're putting band-aids on hemorrhage. We're not really addressing the supply issue. And that's what sort of comes back to where I think what is brilliant about what you're talking about is like, look, what you're talking about makes financial sense. It makes sense from a social point of view, but it also addresses the supply issue that we've got, and it encourages people and generational loans. And this is, as someone with a financial background, but also in real estate, dealing with young people who are looking at a market that seems impossible to get into. The bank of mom and dad, or if let's look, every family, and certainly every immigrant family, it's their dream to push the other generation above their heads and give them whatever help they can to get going. And instead of having big weddings now, we're moving away from that a little bit. I encourage people to help their children with down payments in 0% interest, down payments or low interest loans to help them get into the market so they can start building equity. And even vendor take back mortgages. I mean, we can go into that if you want to talk about them having a vendor take back mortgage as they go into the Joy concept and go live their lives and thrive.
Yeah. You just have to be careful they don't go into second position, which they would probably have to do behind a first, because that second, if things go awry, it's the first to go. But anyway, let me tell you what my dream about Joy is. And right now, the financing has to work through CMHC, which is good, because their mortgages are usually prime less a half, not prime plus two type thing, which helps to, buy the concrete, but it's still a mortgage, and that mortgage gets turned over to the end owner of the building, which is the church, etc. Now, there's enough demand to keep those rents coming in, and all the bills being paid, including the mortgage, etc. But it's still a mortgage, and CMHC goes to 50-year now. But my dream is, and what we've done is we've registered Joy with Canada Gives. You have Canada Helps, and you also have Canada Gives. We've registered it with Canada Gives. That's a national charity. And basically on our Joy website now is a button, for donations. Now we're not there yet. We've just set up the website and everything. But my dream is for every donation that comes in, we don't get a penny of it, by the way. They take 3% and then it goes to the project, So, for every dollar that comes in a donation, that's a dollar less on a CMHC mortgage. So the dream is for some big donors out there, that see this whole thing and say, there's the answer to affordable housing, blah, blah, blah. And some corporate donors, if they can replace half of the CMHC mortgage, the church is only taken over a 30% mortgage, not a 70% mortgage, And, so that's and it's possible. I mean, I'm not saying Jeff Bezos' ex or whoever, what's his name, Microsoft's ex, but there's people out there with billions of dollars looking for a home, and they're donating them. And if that is done with this model, we just repeat it again and again and again.
Fantastic. So is that where you would direct people to support the Joy concept, to go to your website and to press the donate button there, or also the, you said Canada Gives?
Well, they go through the Joy Living website. It's myjoyliving.com, myjoyliving.com. And when that opens up, there's a place that explains, there's a Canada Gives page that explains it. And again, we don't get a penny of those donations, They go direct to the church by Canada Gives, and that goes into, project equity.
Wonderful. Now, I noticed on your dossier there that you have, and we talked about it, that you have a number of sites and projects that are coming up. When could somebody, I know you said Brantford and Newmarket are close ones in the Greater Toronto area, Belleville as well, I saw on there. You have
in Ottawa.
So when can people sort of sign up to participate in this if they want to become part of one of these communities, if they're looking for a unit?
These are rental, they're not condos, so there's no pre-sales, right? So we would enter into reservation agreements about 6 months before completion of the building, because nobody's going to sign an offer at least 2 years in advance. So it's a good year from now, when we get through the planning and everything and into the ground, that would happen. And we'll be marketing each project in each location, that it's open for occupancy agreements, etc. So that's down the road. Right now, it's the approvals and the financing to get them built. And as I said, we've financed most of the projects we've done, so that isn't an issue. The donations are to reduce that financing requirement. So that's open right now. Those donations just get part. Canada Gives the charitable receipts direct. It's a donor advised fund, it's called. So they get a charitable receipt for whatever they donate. And if they want it in a specific location, they want to help a church in Belleville, that's where it would be directed,
That is fantastic. So this is compassionate capitalism in action from our, our very own Torontonian developer, Scottish born, developer. We're so proud of you. Thank you so much for this initiative. We're going to put the website at the bottom of our podcast and all the social media so that you can log on to the website and donate to this amazing initiative that not only is creating amazing communities for our seniors, but will actually help affordable housing in the long run in the Greater Toronto area. This is absolutely a project you can get behind. And, I look forward to highlighting for all those 55 and plus active members in the Greater Toronto area a year from now, when they're starting to look for reservations and you have interest. I promise to direct you on how you can become part of one of these vibrant communities for the joy concept.
Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, bless you.
Bless you too, and thank you so much for being here today, Ian.
You're welcome. So that's it, we're done.